at 6:33 for May 7th, Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors. And the first item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who wants to make public comment? Or anyone online? See anybody online?
One person online. I'm waiting to see if
You can raise your hand if you'd like to.
That might be Nora. Nora, is that
Nora's here.
You're there. Your mom's online. She's just gonna watch you with pride.
She's like, I hope not.
All right.
That might be it.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, let's move on then to the consent agenda. The generally non-controversial items that we have to just pass all as one big block so that we can keep things moving along in the meeting. And of course, if there is something that any board member wants to talk about, they can pull it off of the consent agenda, but let's start. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Reached an agreement with the IA union. So I don't know if that's in there or if that's been publicly acknowledged, but we're grateful to the individual assistance union group, and we're happy to have reached an agreement for I think it's just a 1-year contract. But
We're gonna put all those things together.
Great. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda? Aye. Any opposed? Awesome. And I have one announcement for board members, which is you all have received an email from the VSBA with the form for Libby's annual evaluation. Either tomorrow or Friday, I'm going to send a follow-up email that will have sources that we can go to if you're looking at a question and you're saying to yourself, I'm not really sure how I would answer this one or how I could assess. Libby has put together a helpful guide for us so that we can go to those sources. And some of those are board meetings. So then you would actually have to remember back to board meetings and the different presentations that we get at those, which of course we have minutes and board packets all online. So you can go to those. The deadline for having that completed for each of us to fill out the form is 2 weeks from today, May 21st. And this is one of our essential functions as a board is to evaluate the superintendent. So I really encourage and I'll go so far as to say expect each of us to fill out the evaluation. And please do ask myself or any members of the evaluation committee if you have questions about the eval. And I'm sure you can also just write back to the VSBA to either Debbie or Sandra, whoever sent it. I'm sure would be happy to answer your questions as well as they are facilitating the process for us. Okay, well, before we dive fully into our agenda, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I think UES Principal Katie Barea said it in her swoop scoop this week in that we certainly do appreciate our teachers all year long, that is for sure. But I thought it would be nice to kick off to tonight's board meeting with each of us members going around and just saying something that makes us extra appreciative of our teachers. And I will go ahead and kick it off and then we'll go around to Libby and then we'll go around the room like that. So as I reflect on something that I'm appreciative of our teachers for, it's their commitment to their own professional development and learning to become even better educators every single day for our kids. And also because I think a sneaky suspicion that some of them like it. But that is something that I deeply appreciate about the teachers we have at MRPS.
So I will say, I feel like I should talk to Hannah and Katie since they're like,
Right.
Hannah, I appreciate it. I will say through a story, yesterday I was at MSMS to welcome kids through the doors in the morning, and a 6th grade teacher came out with a kiddo. The kiddo was like going home, I'm not sure, but it was raining. And the teacher and the kiddo came out and put up an umbrella and they were sharing it, and they walked to the corner of what's that, Loomis and Maine there. And the teacher had their arm wrapped around and the kid had the arm wrapped around the teacher, and like that was like the sweetest thing I've seen in a long time. And it's just this, it's like such an image of the MRPS teacher. Every single one of them would be under that umbrella with their arms around a kid. And it was just such a beautiful thing to see first thing in the morning. And it's not unique to just this teacher and this student, which is what the beauty of our teachers are. Oh, thanks.
I thought a lot about this. I'm gonna try to keep it brief because I'm gonna get emotional. I have a junior here at Montpelier High School, so my daughter has gone through her entire MRPS experience here, and we've gotten to do that as parents. And now that we're looking at colleges or whatever is the next step for her, I just continue to be so incredibly grateful for the experience she's had here. I mean, starting with Rachel Whalen, that's her new kindergarten teacher, and first grade, because we were looping, and like lip sync battles and the plays recently. Like, I just feel like, whatever is the next step for her, she has had such incredible, genuine relationships with all of her teachers here that have made her a better person, and I'm just really grateful to all of you for that.
Sorry, I'm having technical problems here, which is my life. So that's what I appreciate about teachers. They know what they're doing. But anyway, I have grandkids at the school, the Turcotte kids. And I just feel like they've gotten a really great education here, and they've liked being here. And that's really important to me, that they want to continue with their education after being in the school system. So thank you for all your hard work and enthusiasm.
I think I really appreciate seeing teachers' willingness to go big on some really cool things, whether it's Madam Khan's winter extravaganza or Mr. Rosenberg's presentation about all the grants that he's chasing to help kids get interested in computer science. There's a real interest and excitement about going big and chasing a better experience for our kids. And I'm so appreciative for that, because I think my kids have really benefited from it. So thank you very much.
I love Teacher Appreciation Week, but it's actually every week. So yeah, coming to the end of my high school career, I appreciate all the teachers I've had in many different subjects and the preparation they've given us for AP exams, which have, only one for me this year, but 4 last year. And just a lot of gratitude to them for all their support and, caring about what you do, not just during school, but after school as well. And, asking how your athletics go or your extracurriculars and wanting to know what you do, outside of school. And they are amazing and they deserve to be recognized. And we have a fantastic group of teachers at MRPS.
I think I certainly can echo all the individual appreciation for the education system and going above and beyond. Mine's a little bit selfish too, because I have an appreciation for how teachers can see my kid and all the other kids that I interact with in a different way than I do. And then like bring that back to me and make me a much better parent and member of my community and be able to go above and beyond in that way. You're not just looking at the kids, you're looking at what goes on around them.
I feel very fortunate that my little guy has had Heather Bates, Susan Koch, and Hannah Geyer as teachers. I think naively, I figured, I'm pretty civilized. My wife, she's pretty civilized. Get together, we would create like a civilized little person, but didn't really turn out quite that way. But he's becoming more and more civilized all the time, and I really appreciate it. And I'm just kind of always blown away by how lucky we are with it. In the ever continuing quest to get a little bit of information from kids about how their day go, I've taken to saying, was today a horrible day? And they never say it was ever. And that usually gets something going, which is nice, a good way to go. So to the teachers of our sort of younger students, thank you for your care. And to the teachers of our older students, thank you for your patience. And for the teachers of our younger students, thank you for your patience, and the teachers of our older students, thank you so much for your care.
I'm gonna also use a story to quickly share my gratitude. It's actually, through my children, we just had the most amazing vacation. We were in Japan for 2 weeks. One of those weeks was during this week, but that's okay.
The board member.
They had quite an education while they were there, and they both of my kids from with their grandmothers had some money that they could spend on whatever they wanted, and just to exemplify how grateful my children are, they use that money to buy gifts to give to their teachers. So we went to this really cool stationery store, and we got all these like Japanese stationery, for their teachers. And then we went to a pottery store, and they wanted to get mugs for their teachers. And so it was just delightful to see how excited they were to be able to buy gifts to bring back to their teachers. And also the candy that they brought to their teachers.
Well, as one of the elder states persons on the board, I have a kid who's gone through the school, is in college now, and another kid who's about to embark on his journey after high school, and then a freshman who also had Rachel Whalen. And I've just been amazed at the support and the care that all three of them have had, and how well prepared my stepson has been for college as a result of the education he's got here. And my son just got back from the French trip with Madame Bay, and the time and dedication that she put into that to make, to bring 20 kids to France and just have it'd be such an amazing, smooth experience. All the extra work she put in, that is typical of teachers throughout this district, and it really has felt like a family. That all the teachers, all the administrators, they know my kids, they care about my kids. It's a special experience, and the teachers make it what it is. So thank you.
He eats baguettes every day.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, yes, happy Teacher Appreciation Week, and we clearly feel very grateful to have the teachers we have. Speaking of, come on up. We'd love to hear from you. We have Hannah Geyer and Katie Swick, two of our teachers at UES, who are going to share with us more about the ECO program. Thank you very much for being here.
Can you hear it? Is it working? Okay. The mics are more for at home for anything else. So.
Well, thanks for all your kind words about teachers. I'm happy to be a teacher in the system of RPS, and I'm happy to be working with people that are happy to appreciative of teachers. Just starting out with that. Yep. Is there a slideshow going up?
Yeah, I'm working.
Okay. We need that.
It's the PDF version, so it's a little bit different.
Uh-oh, it might be different.
But that's okay.
Then we.
I got it. Just tell me when you.
Okay. Well, we're here to talk about educating children outdoors, ECO at UES. Like we said, I'm Katie Swick, and I have a first grade daughter and a 9th grade daughter. And Hannah Geyer, and I have a kindergartner and 3rd grader at UES. So what is ECO? ECO is a partnership with the North Branch Nature Center and the UES teachers. We collaborate together. And it's presented through many ways. We play tons of games, we observe, we journal, there's tons of building, drawing, writing, tracking, and a lot of talking and sharing the stories. Why do we do ECO? Well, a multitude of research shows that kids playing outdoors and learning outdoors improves all these skills. Up here, we're not going to read them, but we wanted to share a little bit more about those skills. So the kids learn when we have to walk, the K-2s, they're walking to Harrison Field or they're walking to Blanchard Park. No matter the weather, we have to wear all our gear, and we have to get there, and we walk there And we stay out there as long as we can until we come back. So, you know, they're getting their physical health, which is great for mental health. And they are also building their resiliency and comfort with being outdoors in the different weather. Yeah. We are going to keep talking.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Well, risk-taking confidence, a lot of our lessons at ECO have a lot of open-ended questions, a lot of open-ended problems we're asking them to solve. And so there's just a lot of confidence building with them, working with their teammates or their groups, deciding how are we going to tackle this? It might look different. And so it just builds a lot of confidence. And they also are doing a lot of connection. Kids end up working with each other in ECO in ways that are different in the classroom or on the playground. So they're connecting with each other, they're connecting with their community, seeing beyond their school, and they're connecting and the North Branch, you know, adults and other volunteers, which build, when you have connection, you build belonging. And curiosity and wonder. Again, we're just constantly asking them to look around and observe, and for a lot of the projects, use what they can find in the field, in the forest, which sometimes doesn't always seem so obvious. So they really just kind of have to ask themselves, what are we going to do and how are we going to start? And again, research shows that, I like to say this tonight, I'm going to say a lot, that building all these skills in ECO also helps increase their skills in the classroom and learning. Okay, we can change this.
I love that picture. We need to put that picture.
Yeah, that was, I like it too.
Don't you wish you could squat like that?
Yeah, yes. And we just wanted to highlight a few lessons that we do in our work, because we've worked really hard as classroom teachers to, and with the North Branch nature teachers to align our curriculum. So what we're doing in the classroom is what we're doing out in ECO. So at the beginning of the year in second grade, we do a project called Where in the World, where kids are sharing special places to them. We're mapping places all over the world. We're talking about maps. And then out in ECO, we are building 3D maps, looking at landmarks, and then reading maps to find little tokens or things out in the world or out in the forest.
So does someone actually hide a penny in the?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So they have to look at the map,
Uh-huh.
see where the penny is on the map, look at the landmarks, look at the features, and go find it wherever it is. In November, we start gearing up for an engineering unit to become engineers out in ECO. And our first project is squirrel drays, building squirrel nests. So they're working together in teams. We make little squirrels out of cardboard. The kids stick them into their nest in their squirrel drays. And then at the end, once everyone's had some time to build, we come along and create a windstorm with water. And we see how tough their houses. And we see what engineers really, what took place with their engineer building. And then this winter, come January, we start a project in our literacy. We're looking at nonfiction text, which then leads into research on a Vermont animal, which then leads into a writing project. So at ECO, we were thinking about the ruffed grouse and how they have adaptations for their feet to walk on snow. And so kids got to go use snowshoes and notice how you walk when you're on snowshoes versus your boots, and how you sneak in a lot. And then you can see someone that's behind there with a ruler measuring. And so we just kind of noticed the difference there. In kindergarten, there's some of our content we're learning about animals in winter. And here they're building models of what frogs need to do in the winter, which is freeze underground. And they're trying to stay cold enough before the thaw happens for them to come out of hibernation. So they were hiding a little green ice cubes in the snow. And so that was one model. There's a story up there about we came back a couple of weeks later after I had thawed, and one of the students said, well, let's go find our frogs. And then they were gone and had melted. I said, oh, well, you know, what happened when the weather changes, right? Another content, the seasons, the weather changing. We learned about both of those in kindergarten. And So we just had this conversation of like, well, where did the snow go? What happens when it gets warm? What do you think happened to the frogs? And she just smiled, a big, huge smile, like, I get it, okay. Just seeing the learning there. And we also we do a lot of games, right? In kindergarten, age appropriate modeling, what happens in nature, predators and prey. So the top picture, the kindergartners were hunting, they were foxes looking for voles, which can be heard under the snow. I'm sure we've all seen those, how they just like jump, foxes jump and jump down. And so the kids were all, there was again, ice cubes in the snow, and they were supposed to look and find them and jump on them like foxes, and kindergarten's kids all learn from doing things. So that was one. Another one was about the human impact on plants and animals. And they were salamanders that had to get across roads in the spring migration to get through their ponds. And so there was a couple students that were cars and tagging the salamanders. And then there was the crossing guard, or the person in the orange, the bright green, that would help the salamanders over to their ponds, their spots, to make it safely. So they practiced that. And I'm not going to go through all those, but another also in kindergarten is like about being flexible and trying new things, trying maple sap when you're out in the forest listening to story. They also have tried tea that we cooked on a Kelly kettle. And so just learning to be flexible, and also there's just so many more. The building body awareness. There was I added a picture after this was posted, but there was one of kids climbing, so I was just they're really becoming to gain self-control when they're out there playing and learning about their bodies and what they can and cannot do, building, exploring, all that good stuff. And we asked kids what they thought about eco. All 4th grade, and here are some of the things they said. In kindergarten, in eco, we learned all about lizards. The lizards can dance. I don't mean they can stand up and dance, and they just move around very fast and wiggle. And actually, I'm going to tell you, that came from a student. I came from a volunteer that works with one of my students, and she had to email and tell me that was on the conversation she had gotten from one of my students. So she's like, you just have to hear this story.
The 1st grader said, I love the outdoors and the activities you get to do, like building. Eco's and an opportunity to go outside and be in the forest.
2nd grade, I love eco because we love to build and be outside. It is fun to learn about animals.
The 3rd grader said, I like eco because I like seeing animals in nature. I also like running and playing in the forest.
And 4th grade, I like how we can hear the birds and be in nature. I like to feel the fresh air. It is good to learn about nature because it teaches us how to care for nature. Being inside all day gets us used to being inside, and it's not good for a healthy life. Eco teaches us to be outside and love nature. As long as we have a growth mindset, we can learn so much from our eco teachers. They know so much about the natural world. We are lucky because this school lets us have eco, and I don't know if every school does have eco. I do not think every school has eco. Which leads us to our last comment, that I, as a teacher, I feel my job is to prepare students for the future. And I know from all my professional development that students are motivated by things they love. And the only way to love our planet and where we live is to experience nature and being outdoors with eco. And then they can grow up and take care of it, because we all know we need that to happen. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Any
Thank you.
questions for Hannah and Katie before they sneak away?
What was that?
Before you sneak away.
No, we just want to say we really love eco. UES really loves eco, and we just think it's really important. Just like Katie said, you might think in Vermont, a lot of kids are always outside playing, and every year I kind of notice kids, some kids go outside and they seem very comfortable and they're ready to dig and get dirty. And some kids, you just see them grow because they were not as comfortable day one. And by the end of the year, they've grown a lot just by being outside.
Yeah, and then you add that to the years, doing it every year and that's important.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for being here.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing all that. Excellent. So now we're moving on to the first item for board discussion is our new student representation to the board. We have Nora here. And we also have a letter from Sam Boyce. Sam was not able to make it tonight. Nora, if you would like to come up and say a few words, you're welcome to. It's not a requirement. And I myself am a nervous public speaker, so I know that can be a little nerve-wracking, although you've been on stage, I believe. So I think you're probably better at this than I am. True. Playing a part rather than speaking your own words. That's very true.
I just wanted to say, like, I feel like this position is such like an important thing because it gives students like the opportunity to help make decisions by providing like their perspectives from being in the school, just like on the issues that they have. And I feel like I really want to be a part of this because it will give me so many opportunities to like engage myself and be more involved with my school, which will give me the power to make a change and create a better environment for my peers.
Great. Thanks, Nora. Do you have any questions for us?
Not really.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions for Nora?
Do you know like about the time commitment, right? Like on the meetings, like the morning
Okay.
evenings like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we just want to make sure students are aware, like it's a time commitment on top of everything else you have going on.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So Amani and Miriam are both graduating, right? We're saying goodbye. Miriam is not, simply just,
Early college. Yeah. She'll be up at UVM.
so she's not going to be on the board anymore, or she is?
She's not on the board.
Right, they're both leaving the board. That's the headline I was getting to, even though I didn't fully get all the details. Now I get, great. So, which means that we have 2 positions to fill and 2 applications.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we don't need to go into executive session to deliberate. What does that sound good? Which we have in the past.
That suggests that.
Which we have in the past, because when the board makes appointments to seats, whether it be student representatives or a community member, if we have multiple people interested in it, we have gone to an executive session to discuss that, but I don't think we need to do that tonight. I think we can say thank you and congratulations to Nora and to Sam.
Yeah.
In absentia. Or
Not for student rep.
No.
yeah, just welcome.
Congratulations.
And Nora and Sam, if you're listening, I will be in touch soon and we can have a chance to chat. Okay.
And I am also forgetting the details on whether or not, I mean, I think you're welcome to come to the board meetings for the rest of the school year, but I think it's not official necessarily until the end of the school year. Is that correct? I might be.
So my understanding was that we would welcome Nora to join the meetings, but that the beginning of the next school year is
Yeah.
when their term would officially start.
Great.
But we would invite them to any of the meetings we want. If they want.
You're welcome to come.
Yeah.
And going into junior. And Sam is a junior going to be a senior. Great. And so we'll also start, will that be when they get into the school? We have that school board at mpsvt.org. The beginning of next school year is when their emails will get in there. Yeah, because that's when it's official. Okay, great. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to an update on H 454, which is the state legislation on education transformation in the state of Vermont.
Yeah, this will be a quick discussion. But feel free to ask any questions. So the H 454 that I presented on last time moved from the House to the Senate Education Committee for some very rambunctious committee discussions. I think would be a fair statement. And it is now in the hands of Senate Finance. It just got into Senate Finance's hands, so I don't believe they've made many changes as of yet. I think they're just doing read-throughs right now. The Senate Education Committee changed the bill considerably from what the House had. And it's the main ones to look at are in 7 different factors. So I've got them listed out, assuming I can read my chicken scratch here. So one of the changes that Senate Education suggested to the bill is to change the composition of the team to determine new district lines. So if you remember, the House's bill had, it was basically a non-voting group from the Commission of the Future of Education, which included educators and legislators. The Senate Education would like to nix that and make all the people on that legislators, no educators, and not connected to the future of the education or whatever that commission of the future of education. It moves the date up from the House. The date was to have 3 acceptable plans or choices by December. The Senate's education idea is to have at least 1 by September. So it moves it up considerably. The funding model. So the foundation formula is looking pretty much in play because it's still a foundation formula. The Senate Education kind of cross lines with the Senate Finance because this is really the Senate Finance's job, but the Senate Education Committee changed the foundation base amount and also changed the weights that were in the bill from the House side of things. So they changed them in different places, and I think ultimately there are less weights. The base rate is also less than what the House presented. With the funding formula, it should be put out there that last Thursday, the Agency of Education came with what they're calling an enhanced evidence-based model. So they say they took feedback from the field to make a different evidence-based model that is different than what the governor's team originally proposed. But that came to the Senate Education Committee on Thursday. And even in that conversation, they were like, this is at the 9th hour. I'm not sure what to do, right? So there's what there's what the House put out there with Tammy Colby's research. There's what the Senate Education put out there. And then last Thursday, there's another model that the Agency of Education put out there.
And this is all still around foundation
formula.
Okay.
Different weights, different bases, all these things. So that Senate Finance will now take a look at. And the third piece that was a significant change is to allow, and I know enough about this to be dangerous. I'm just going to put this out here because it doesn't influence MRPS. So what I know about tuitioning to independent schools, I know through conversations with my colleagues, but because we don't deal with this very much, it's not something that I have a considerable amount of knowledge about. So if you have questions, I'm happy to write them down and find answers for you, but I can't answer them probably adequately. But the Senate Education Bill allows for the continuation of current funding to independent schools, except for out of the country. So there's still public dollars going to private institutions, whereas the House Education Bill significantly curtailed that. In terms of the Senate Education is kind of recommending an Act 46 light, and that's Libby's opinion. That's not the words in the bill, but it's how I would to encourage districts to merge on their own instead of forced consolidations through and suggest that there should be incentives to districts to do that, which is what happened with Act 46 through tax incentives. There also is in the Senate Education Bill, which is different than the House bill, is to allow for the continuation of the supervisory union construct. So the House Education Bill would take away the supervisory union construct, and just for the difference between what's a school district and what's a supervisory union, just for people who don't know this lingo, supervisory union is really just a Vermont construct. It's not anywhere else. It's the idea that each school is basically its own district and has its own board, and then there's an oversight board with membership from each of the school buildings. So if we were a supervisory union and not a district, Union would have a board, Main Street would have a board, Montpelier High School would have a board, and then there would be an SU board with, and that is a construct that is pretty much only in Vermont, I believe, and is around the state. Which some proponents say that is a very efficient way to use that because it's a lot of local control. A lot of SUs have school choice. Some have school choice because of necessity, because there isn't a high school within range of their kids. And some are an SU structure because of just choice. They like that structure from the local control perspective. Some will say it is a very inefficient way to govern a school district. Some will say it's not. It depends who you're talking to. Number 6, sorry. The Senate Education Bill stripped class size minimums. So there's no mention in the Senate Ed version around class size minimums, which was in the House bill. And then finally, it stripped the ideas, Senate Ed stripped the ideas of a statewide calendar, a statewide student information system, and a statewide finance system, which is problematic if you're talking about consolidation because you need those things in place in order to make consolidation more feasible. But that's all stripped out of there. So the bill, again, is currently in the hands of Senate Finance. They probably won't look at any of the consolidation pieces. Senate Finance will probably only look at the foundation formula, and they'll play around with that. But this bill is headed to conference committee, pretty much guaranteed, headed to conference committee to duke it out. For the House and Senate to duke it out. But I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have, but that's really the update. Those are the big headlines as to what was changed from the House version of the bill. Jake, you got anything to add to that? I always look at Jake to be like, what I miss.
Track ed stuff back closely. I think that the encouraging districts can get together on their own was kind of like a fallback. Like if the way I understand it, like this group would come up with districts and then it would bring it to the legislature in January and vote. If the legislature can't agree, then they will do this covered.
Voluntary incentive. Yeah, that was my understanding too. The forced consolidation from the field's perspective is looking less and less likely based on where we are right now. Yeah. The foundation formula is looking more and more likely. So what that base rate is going to be is pretty important.
Yeah.
No, the foundation formula piece. So that's the finance side of the house, not the consolidation, not the governance side of the house. Yeah. So with the Senate Education, what the last doc I was looking at, they were modeling. I'm not sure what the assumptions were made when how they were modeled it, but they were modeling based on FY25's budget to show the reduction or the gain in a district, but instead of the FY26 budget. So with the FY25 budget, MRPS with the Senate Education was in for a 3% decrease in allotment based on that modeling. But really, if you're looking at what our FY26 budget is that we've already voted on and are planning on it, that's $7 million more. And so there, it's more than 3% decrease.
Reduction of budget.
Reduction of budget based on the Senate Education bill. And I do want to say this is nowhere near being done. We're going to go to conference committee. So,
And what's the timeline for conference committee roughly?
so
Most likely this is not getting voted on this year. Or yes, it is. That, I think that's what it, because.
The plan is for the foundation formula piece to be voted on this
Interesting.
year,
Mhm,
is my understanding.
mhm.
Maybe that doesn't happen, but I'm not sure. The Senate Finance Committee got it this week. I think it was voted out of Senate Ed Friday afternoon. So they got it this week. I think it's supposed to be in their hands for 2 weeks, and then it will go to the full Senate for a vote,
Mhm.
and then it goes to its conference committee. So we're not talking until June. They're gonna
Yeah.
hold the legislature there till June to come up with some sort of decision.
So is my feeling right, which is kind of unfortunately how I felt this might go the whole way, which is that they will do something on the foundation formula and put districts under a squeeze, but the tough things to actually achieve savings, to blunt that, are probably gonna get tossed out because they don't have the political will to take on those fights.
The friendly amendment I would make to that is that some districts will be squeezed, not all.
Okay,
So Barry gets way more money under a foundation
Under-
formula than what their voters are voting in.
because historically, their voters have underfunded the district.
They will also get a significant tax increase under the foundation formula.
Oh, right.
Yes. Which also leads me to kind of my initial thought, which it is probably smart for us to continue to pursue talks with Wash Central, because we may not be in a situation where that is forced on us, but we may be in a situation where we at least want to know whether there are savings to be had that will allow us to continue the level of education services.
I think it's worthwhile to do the research to find out what educational opportunities we could give to kids at a price that the taxpayers can afford.
And then total political question, which may be outside of your bailiwick, but which in terms of leadership, House or Senate, who's more invested in this? Who do you think is going to push harder? Like where is?
I think that
Where's
they're
the bulk
invested
coming
in
from?
very different things. I say, based on the hours of legislation of committee meetings that I've watched, and conversations I've been a part of. So keep in mind, this is Libby opinion, right? The House is more invested in public education opportunities for kids at a price taxpayers can afford. The Senate, particularly some members of the Senate Education Committee, not the entire Education Committee, but some members are very focused on preserving independent schools and public dollars going to independent schools. And that's evidenced by their actions in the tuitioning pieces of the bill.
The amendments.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you have any idea why that is?
The head of the committee is a board member of an independent school, and one of the prime members of Senate Finance is a teacher at St. John's Ferry Academy.
Okay, that's also thing. Why do they want to keep supervisory?
Because it preserves
Local
choice.
control.
Okay,
It preserves,
it's
it
choice.
preserves
Yeah.
choice. If you have a supervisory union, then you have choice somewhere in that supervisory union. Again,
As long as
sometimes
it's
by
multiple-
choice, sometimes by,
multiple schools,
necessity. Yeah,
Like multiple schools at that grade level.
Yeah.
You have choice of where to go within. that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes it's by necessity, or geography, right? And sometimes it's by just choice.
Other questions folks have?
If the foundation formula is to pass, when does that go into effect for our budget purposes?
Depends on what the legislation says. Right now, the plan is not for next year. Next year, we should have a relatively typical budget process. There are significant worries about next year's budgeting process, mainly because of healthcare increases. And right now it's slated to the year after that. So next year would be the last typical budget process.
I don't know if you mentioned already, but Senate envisions like FY 28 as being the first foundation formula year, and House is FY 30.
Oh, is it? Yeah. So depends on what the final legislation is.
On the budget front, the yield bill passed the Senate today.
Oh, good.
And it applies a lot of one-time money to buying down tax rates in FY
Bad.
26. So Montpelier and Roxbury are gonna have pretty nice, reasonable looking taxes this year. Starting in July, but the next cycle could be very, very painful. Because when you use one-time money to buy down tax rates, it creates kind of an artificial trough that you're in, and you have to climb out of it. And many other things are lining up to be problematic, like teaching health insurance and maybe federal funding too. So it could be really, really gnarly year for next year.
So second question, the House version, the foundation formula is not far from where we're at, kind of. And then the Senate
As far as
is-
the amount of money
yeah,
per student
sort of,
allocated?
yeah, like if that were to go just as is, it would be not too far from where we are, no major pain, just in terms of the foundation formula. But the Senate one, more than 3%, you said maybe $7 million difference. So there's a possibility that we're looking at somewhere between we're okay and up to $7 million.
No, the $7 million is the difference between this year's budget, the FY 26 budget, 25 budget and FY 26 budget, right?
Yeah. So, the modeling that I saw from the Senate education side of the house. Side of the legislature, sorry. Was that it's modeled on FY 25. So the year we're ending right now, which was like a 25 million plus budget, right? Well, we've passed a budget that's 32 million for FY 26. So this modeling is done presuming that the foundation formula is coming in FY 28. I'm gonna take just to make sure that I got that right? So FY 28 decrease is based on the decrease from FY 25.
Or that's our base, the basis.
The amount from FY 25. So it's already inherently off. Like we know what FY 26 is, make it based on FY 26 and then redo the modeling when we have FY 27. So it's a tricky, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, 3% decrease. Okay, like we can probably, if that were to be true, we could probably figure that out. But then when I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, that's not our budget for next year, right? That's significantly lower than our budget for next year. And all of us in the room who were looking at it at the same time, all the soups in the room had the same aha, almost at identical moments and had a little party over that one for a bit. And the other thing that's important to note in terms of what that base rate will be, and I know enough about this to be dangerous, so Jake, if I say something wrong, then correct me. The House's version that's based on Tammy Colby's research is based on reaching proficiency in our current state. Like it's based on our current state of how we fund education, right? So its intent is to not really dramatically change how much money school districts get. The Agency of Education's, what they're calling enhanced ED model, is based on a future state, assuming consolidation is happening in some way, right? Whether it's 5 districts or 13 districts or whatever, that is assuming that some sort of consolidation happens. So it's a future state. So what they're saying is, yes, it's less, but we'll have less people, essentially, right? The Senate education, I don't know I don't know the assumptions that they were making with what they did. I don't know if that was ever stated.
The Senate had stuff out a little.
It got wonky, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the AOE's model is based on like evidence-based is what it's called. It's like this guy, Larry Pikus, did a study on like how school districts should spend money and like what their ideal size is. So it's based on those factors, whereas the House stuff is based on like what Vermont has been doing in the past 7 years, like looking at the Vermont patterns and trying to kind of memorialize them with numbers. So it's like kind of a philosophical thing of like, do you want to lock in what Vermont has been doing, or do you want to go with what evidence suggests is the best way to spend money? And the House said, well, let's lock in what we have been doing for a while, but then we'll plan to eventually switch over. And that seems unlikely to really ever happen. And so AOE is saying, well, if you're gonna make a big change to a foundation formula, you could start off with, the way it should be in their eyes.
But I recall even that evidence base that they were using had some flaws in it. Like it
Sure.
skipped
Oh, yeah.
some of the actual staff that are in schools. Like it didn't count cafeteria workers and
Yeah, yeah.
custodians and things like
It
that.
has various flaws, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Any questions like this on the one? I have one, we've been talking very much in the weeds of the details between the two versions of the bill. And I have one that a friend of mine, I went for a walk with her earlier this week and kind of just pulled me out of those weeds and was like, just tell me, are our children going to be going to a bigger high school? And I was like, I think so. I mean, at the time, it seemed like that the consolidation is going to happen. But now I hear you saying that the motivation for that seems to be waning some, whereas motivation for foundation formula is still staying strong.
Yes,
Interesting.
politically,
Right.
solely political in nature.
So shocked.
And I still don't believe, I said this last time, I still don't believe our communities, plural, understand what's happening,
No,
right? And
definitely
so
not.
if the legislators are getting cold feet around the consolidation now without a considerable community outcry, except for those who pay attention to this kind of stuff, right? Which why would you if you don't sit in my seat? I think that they recognize that they'd be in for an even bigger piece if they voted in, but it's kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. One of the pieces
What do you mean when you say that?
well, one of the pieces of the foundation formula, regardless of what we do with consolidation, if you move to a foundation formula, then the theory is that all kids get the same amount of money, right? Which sounds great in theory. We've been funding our kids at, 13 plus per pupil, right? 13K plus per pupil. Well, Slate Value is 8K per person, right? So if everybody, let's just say that we use 13.5 as a base and every kid is 13.5. Slate Valley, the people who are demanding tax relief most are going to get the biggest tax increase here with a foundation formula. Richford, Enosburg, Barry, all the places who have been perennially underspending in education because they can through a vote are going to get a significant increase in their tax rate.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be very happy about that.
And it's not being talked about.
Yeah.
It's just simply not being talked about at the legislative level, that I've seen anyway.
I mean, also isn't there a reality too that the same amount, depending on how your district spends its money, doesn't necessarily get each kid the same thing.
Right, you'll have the weights,
Yeah.
right? So the weights come into play, which provides a little differentiation for the district. But it's still, I mean, my superintendent colleagues in the underspending districts don't underspend because they want to, right? They underspend because that's what the tax, they're doing the best they can with what they have. They would love to have more opportunity for kids.
Yeah. And just to your point, I think somebody said this, maybe it was Rhett in the last time we talked about this, which is just because you're getting more money for, say, special ed kids, doesn't mean the district's actually going to spend it on special ed kids. Because there's no mechanism in.
Right, there's something in the Senate education law, or I didn't really truly understand how they're gonna do it, but there was a nod towards that of some sort of accountability measure.
I see.
Around just that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would happen, quite honestly. I just don't remember how it happened.
I also saw something in the explainer you sent us around addressing health insurance costs as I don't know, maybe it was just like a study. I couldn't tell exactly.
So I know that Chelsea passed around to the trustees, Chelsea Myers, the VSA executive director, passed around some testimony that she was giving to Senate Ed, I believe, maybe tomorrow. around healthcare. And really around the negotiation and bargaining process of how that's done, because right now it's a one side take all. So both the school board side and the teachers union side present plans to an arbitrator. And an arbitrator doesn't have any choice but to pick one or the other.
Oh, wow.
Right? So the arbitrator can't say, well, this is good from this plan and this is good from this plan. And so typically it's just the way it happens. They typically vote for the employee, the arbitrator, right? And so what the suggestion is to change the negotiation rules. So the arbitrator has more play.
Which could be helpful when it comes to budgets, but isn't actually going to, it's not a thing that's going to help reduce health insurance costs.
Right.
It looks like they're going to, well, one of the Senate amendment analysis of the impact of healthcare costs on the education fund,
Yeah.
including recommendations.
Thank
So
you.
that's-
That's what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's frustrating. I mean, I can understand that's the lens that we're looking at this through, which is what's the lever we can pull as far as impacting budgets, but it's not an action. It doesn't address the big picture, which
Right.
is that health insurance costs
Skyrocket.
skyrocket every year. Any other questions? Yeah, and just to your point, Libby, on the members of our community are not aware, communities are not aware. I think that's absolutely right. This friend that I was talking to is paying closer attention. And that's one thing she said to me is like, people don't know this is happening.
Yeah, I had a walk with one of our parents this week too, and walking talking around this bill. They were saying the same thing.
And it is hard to know how to communicate about it though, because you know, even just 2 days ago, I said, yeah, I mean, I think consolidation's looking like pretty realistic, but I was wrong, or maybe I'm not. So it's not like, how do you construct any kind of communication around this to like help people just to stay aware? I don't know. I'm at a loss. Maybe
I
it's a
think as
rhetorical
in any
question.
communication, as I learned in the multiple crises we've been through, is you tell the information that you have at the time and say this information is subject to change.
Yeah.
And I know differently, I will tell you differently.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to another update that is about education that we all care about. Scott, our member on the Central Vermont Career Center, thanks for bringing an update on the future plans.
Sure. So I can't remember the last time I shared about so CVCC has been going through this many-year process of visioning a new facility that could provide a full day for a larger number of students. I think it's something like only about a third of the students who want to go are ultimately accepted into the program. So there's a huge demand, and the facilities just aren't where they're at. Spalding just aren't appropriate for the demand. So there's a property that was identified that they went through. I'm not on the facilities committee, so I don't know all the nitty gritty, but they went through this multi-step process of identifying potential properties that both have water and sewer and would be appropriate for a building of that size. Ultimately, I think final property is in Berrytown on Baptist. I can get the address if you're interested. They have an agreement with the landowners. It's basically like a right of first refusal kind of deal. The landowners didn't want to sell necessarily, and they're not planning on it, but so ultimately this would have to go to a bond vote for all of towns that sent to CPCC. And if the bond vote was successful, then ultimately, the sellers agreed not to sell the property, to anyone until, there was a successful bond vote and ultimately the project was going to go forward. They've gone through iterations of drawings. I have some updated drawings. They went through a 3D concept design process, and in fact, just recently shared with all the staff. And so I have some of that stuff. Jody said I can share it with the caveat that it was prepared for the staff at CVCC. So that was the audience. There was a meeting this week on Tuesday. What was that yesterday?
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but it was at the Barry Town Select Board, and there was a number of concerns raised by community members. Ultimately, I think the plan is to have multiple forums in all of the districts, or in near all of the towns for all the sending districts. So there's one scheduled for June 11th here from 6 to 7:30. There's one in May 27th at Harwood, June 2nd at Twin Fields, and then I think one of the upcoming CDC board meetings will also be a community forum for the Barry town and Barry city residents. What else?
Can you say again the location? The road, is it off of the airport road or somewhere?
No, that was one of there was like
Previous discussion.
there were 3 or 4 like sort of ideal locations, one of which was off of Airport Road. Ultimately, there were a couple of factors. One, there were some woodlands on the property that would have made it more expensive and more difficult, and constrain how the building would be. And I don't think the landowners were amenable to whatever would have happened there. And so let's see. There are the property in Barry Town does actually have like staked out, so you could go up and see it. And I think many of the CDCC staff members have gone up and seen the property and seen sort of where the stakes are and what the building would look like. Yes, so I'm switching between my 2 different emails to. Yeah, it's Baptist Street. In Barry Town. So like up near like Granville, basically.
What were some of the concerns, if you know, that community members voiced?
Oh, there's a whole long list of them. So concerns around traffic, light pollution, the size of the building impacting I want to say groundwater, but water running off. Thank you very much. The cost is obviously a concern. So a lot of the like infrastructure, sewage, the impact on sending schools is a big concern. And Jill, from your history, you may be able to share, like, the goal, I think, is to get away from the competitive model, right? Right now, we don't want CBCC to be competing with MRPS for students. Like, that's not, there's no competition, like, they're different purposes and they shouldn't be competing. And so there's some concerns around what the impact would be, like sending districts whose student populations are declining and then creating another large school that may actually not be large enough, right? So what if they build a school that can house 500 students and 1,000 students per day, right? And so, yeah, those are some of the concerns if I remember correctly. And there are a lot. There was a Baptist Street neighbors group put together a whole, but much longer list of concerns. Yeah, many of which are what I just mentioned. There's one, I don't know Barry well enough, but there was one site that was identified that was in a more industrial area, and I can't remember what, but for whatever reason that was identified, it was determined that it wouldn't match the zoning. And I think some of the residents in Barry town are like, well, it makes much more sense to not disrupt a residential neighborhood with this large project. It would be better suited for that area that's already sort of zoned industrial. But I don't remember why. For whatever reason, it can't do. I guess you can't build a school in an industrial zone. Within that zone. So I think it would be great if we could get the word out to our community. I was it just recently that date and time that just recently set.
And location, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be here in the library.
Fantastic.
And I think Jody's gonna make some advertisements and we'll get them out to our normal channels.
And that would be for both MRPS as well as the U32 district.
Yes, we're co-hosting it.
Fantastic.
Do you know if the kind of purpose of these community forums is to build support toward a bond or to get community feedback, or what are they hoping to use this time for?
I think at this point, the community feedback is most important. And I think, so I don't know yet. I think there's a question of whether or not the bond vote should be in November on election day or in March on
Whoa.
election day.
Both of those seem very soon to me.
Yes.
Wow.
And there are trade-offs, right? If you have it in November, basically the only thing on the up for election is the bond. And so you'll have a much lower turnout, but the people who show up will be showing up to vote on that bond. Whereas on meeting day, you have a little bit more time, but you're gonna have more turnout, and so you don't know. The people who are voting may not necessarily be voting, have as much information, and so.
And if the budget is gonna be as gnarly as our friend Jake is saying it could be, then they might not wanna tie themselves on a bond vote to people saying, no, we don't wanna vote on this school budget. Wow.
And
It's complicated.
It's complicated even further because they're talking about creating one statewide.
Yeah, the legislation is so far from being complete around tax centers. That's another part of the legislation that we haven't even talked about.
I saw a nod to it or something in the explainer you sent us. Yeah. That was gonna be one of my questions, and maybe I'll just ask it when I come to the forum, which is like, how does what they are planning to do intersect with anything that's happening at the state level, or does it even, or is this happening on its own, or?
I think my understanding, again, because I'm not on the facilities committee, is there's still plenty of off-ramps. Right, so like there's, other than a very small amount of money that's been put into like some of the stormwater runoff, they had to do some, I'm looking over here, they had to do some studies to understand the impact environment, and other than a very small amount of money that's been put to that, there's essentially nothing is set in stone.
Got it.
And so I think there are opportunities to go in any number of different directions, depending on what happens with the legislature, with a bond vote, with any number of the sort of various outcomes.
You have to know on the potential bond vote, if every community has to approve it, or is it like you?
I'm not gonna say this for sure. I'm pretty sure it's all of the towns put together into one. It's not like
The majority of the people who vote.
but it could be no one in Barry approves it, but everyone in all of the others of towns approve it, and so it's the majority.
That's
I'm fairly certain that's what
it.
Talking about it, trying to fill.
I mean, I said we, I'm not involved in the process, but like there's a huge interest in CTE and the facility is just not appropriate. And
Yeah.
so it's like, you want to have a state-of-the-art facility to be able to provide quality programming and also all of the issues that.
Yeah.
you know,
Right, at the big picture, it's like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
but then you start to get into the complexities. It's like,
And I just saw that one of the executive orders from the federal government now is like potentially infusing a lot of resources to the CTE. So I don't know how that intersects with.
wow.
And it was an executive order.
Executive orders are not law.
Exactly.
That's correct. Or budget amendments.
And again, I've been gone for a couple of weeks and I'm not on the facilities committee, and so I may have gotten some of the details
Mhm.
slightly wrong, and that's why I think it'll be great to have Jody here and some of the other facilities committee members who have been much more active in the process.
Yeah, that'll be, I agree. Any other questions for Scott?
No, thank you so much for the update. It's exciting. I think it's just really important to remember, like, there are so many students who benefit from that, and like demand is so much greater, and they're not regular classrooms, and they're different safety needs for a current technical center. So there's just a lot more sort of specialized components that in order to make it successful, but I'm excited and I'm hopeful we can get the students the information that we need.
Thank you for your doing well.
Yeah.
So much.
Most definitely. Okay, let's move on to our policy readings. We have a third reading for policy E1, which is Title I, Part A, Parent, Guardian, and Family Engagement Policy. Jill, can I hand this over to you?
Sure. So we've been working with the administration on this policy for a while. It's a required policy and the language is pretty prescribed as far as what we can and cannot change. Libby floated it with the various caregiver councils and her staff and her leadership team. So those changes have been incorporated. So we're at the point of third reading. I think we might want to either pull it or have a fourth reading because you found some typos. And
There's just one typo that we
Okay.
can fix that doesn't change any intent. So, do you want to know what it is?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Michael found it. So Mike and I both read through this. Mike Berry, our Director of Curriculum and Technology, in number 11, it says MRPS will take the following actions to educate its teachers. And Mike noticed that the list underneath it were not actions.
Okay.
And so just take the following actions out and just say MRPS will educate its teachers. And that was all we found.
Okay.
Which I don't believe deserves a fourth reading.
No,
No, I think that's probably fine.
You can just have that, so.
And just as a reminder, this is for Title I, Part A for our elementary school programs. So we are required to have this in place.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Any questions or other thoughts from board members on this policy?
Yes, is this just sort of naming a lot of things that we were already doing, or are we gonna be adding additional sort of community engagement, sort of the opportunities as a result of this? I know it's a much bigger, more broad scoped policy than the one it replaced. But does it change a lot for us, or?
It didn't change a significant amount. The last policy had a district-wide parent compact. This policy has school-based parent compacts that need to be revised every year. It puts this guarantee language into the events and the communication practices and all of that piece. So yeah, in a way, it's showing what we are doing in these areas, and at the same time, it's
An accountability sort of measure.
yeah. In a way that matches the current law. Our former policy doesn't match the current law.
Any other questions? So it's my understanding that for the next board meeting, this policy will just be in the consent agenda and we'll vote, that's how we'll vote to approve it and make it district policy.
Yep.
So this is literally your last, no, I'm just kidding. If it's on consent agenda, you can pull it off the consent agenda next meeting, but it seems like this one is pretty well set.
I just want to say thank you. I was on the policy committee when this first
Yeah, it's a long time.
came on the radar screen and
Yeah.
and it was a beast of a policy.
It's gonna be a piece to monitor. That's
It
for
is,
sure.
yeah.
I absolved myself of that when I got off the policy committee. So thank you for getting it across the finish line. Well, almost.
We're very close. And thank you for all the outreach to get feedback and input. Appreciate it. Okay, so then we have first reading of policy C15, student conduct and discipline.
So this is another required policy. We had a placeholder for it on our policies on our website. This was basically pulled verbatim from the Vermont School Board Association Student Conduct and Discipline model policy. So we haven't spent much time on it because I think it's pretty much formulaic that we need to adopt this with relatively little changes. So this is just the first reading for this, and we'll be talking about this at our next policy. And if it's helpful, I think this also came up in the context of some, recent just hearings and things like that we've been addressing, that we realized we needed to make sure we had this policy in place.
Wow. When I was reading through it, I wondered if well, given that it's required, I'm guessing just like all of our other required ones, we don't have much language change we can make, but I did wonder if maybe there was a chance to get student input on this one. And or maybe we could add to the policy that because there's like the principals are tasked with creating the plan, if maybe the part of that is that the principals get student input in order to create the plan.
Maybe I can start with asking leadership how to navigate that, how to get that genuine input.
If it's possible, yeah.
It's happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten student input on different policies in the past,
Mhm.
or Solon Block, or inviting kids to a session.
Yeah, or we could, yeah. It's not a very long one too, so even just like sharing it and then asking a few survey questions or something.
I don't know if that language needs to be in the policy, because really once the plan is in place, the plan is in place.
Uh-huh.
Right, so it could just be a ask of the board to, as the policy is going through the reading process, that student voice is considered.
When we create the policy, not creating the plan.
Yeah, I think that it could be just an expectation that student voices, because once you have a plan, you have a plan, right?
Uh-huh.
It's kind of on paper and it's ready to go.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't change very much.
but if
Year to year.
do we already have the plan?
We have a discipline plan. It's in
Oh, I
our
see.
handbook. Yeah.
I thought, okay, because
It could be more, this makes it more articulate, like what would cause a suspension, what would
Right.
cause an expulsion.
right,
That makes it a little bit more explicit.
okay,
I'm not sure how much voice there is there, but
to impact the plan.
yeah.
Got it, yeah, okay.
I'd say a comment and just channeling feedback I've gotten from teenagers on the idea of student input. They view it a little cynically. And the input I've gotten is, I mean, and I think that the lesson is when we solicit student input, we make it clear that the adults are making the decision and that we're going for consideration, because the feeling is that students spend time giving input and then we do something else.
Their perception is we do nothing with that.
We do
Yeah.
nothing with that input. And some of them have said it would almost be better if you just said, hey, we're gonna make the decision, rather than it looks a little like a phony exercise to them. So I think we should be clear when we do it that it is for consideration, but the adults are making the decision, and just because 90% of the kids want X, doesn't mean X is gonna happen.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
I also add that doesn't mean that they shouldn't stop sharing, because there is, there are many people who feel like if what they're looking for isn't happening, they're gonna stop asking for it, or they're gonna give up on the process altogether. And that's maybe appropriate if you're in second grade. Maybe not, but certainly not in the real world. In the real world, when you stop asking, you don't get.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, which is why I think if we're gonna do it, we should do it in a way that does not,
Just be clear.
it is clear and does not breed it.
Yeah.
We do not need one.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts on this policy? Before the policy committee reviews it? Okay, well then let's move on to policy monitoring. We've got the policies of C10, which is prevention of hazing, harassment, and bullying, and F2, non-discriminatory mascots and school branding. We have a motion to approve those monitoring reports.
I move we approve these monitoring reports for policy C10 and F2.
Thanks, Jill. Is there a second? Thanks, Casey. Any discussion on either of them?
So really quickly, I noticed that, I don't know that it matters, but that the links are switched. in our
Oh.
agenda. So the monitoring report,
I thought.
Thanks for pointing that out.
C10 is, yeah.
And I can fix that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I think that is everything we have to do tonight.
Whoa. Whoa.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Is there a second? Jake seconds. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Great. Have a good night, everybody.